What happens when the opponent standing across the net isn't someone you dislike, but someone you genuinely care about? That's the fascinating situation surrounding Eala and Iva Jovic as the two rising stars prepare to meet on August 27th at Arthur Ashe Stadium during the US Open's Stars of the Open exhibition. On paper, it sounds straightforward. Two talented young players stepping onto one of tennis's biggest stages for a charity showcase. But underneath that simple matchup is a much more interesting story. Eala and Jovic aren't bitter enemies trying to manufacture drama. They're close friends, members of the same emerging generation, and competitors who can support each other away from the court while still wanting nothing more than to win once the first ball is struck. And there's another detail that makes this matchup impossible to ignore. Jovic already owns a 2-0 head-to-head advantage over Eala. So the real question heading into New York is whether history repeats itself, or whether Eala has changed enough over the past few months to completely flip the script. First, you have to understand just how impressive Iva Jovic's rise has been. According to the source material, the 18-year-old American reached the Australian Open quarterfinals in 2026, becoming the youngest American woman to reach the Final 8 in Melbourne since Venus Williams in 1998. She has climbed as high as world number 16 and established herself as one of the brightest young players on the WTA Tour. She also captured her first professional title at the Ascension Project Women's Open, further proving that she isn't simply a promising junior waiting for her moment. She's already becoming a serious professional competitor, and when it comes specifically to Eala, Jovic has had the answer so far. The two met twice in recent months, first at the French Open in May and again at Queen's Club in June. Jovic won both matches in straight sets. Their French Open meeting was particularly convincing, with Jovic taking it 6-2, 6-1. Just weeks later at Queen's, she defeated Eala again, this time 6-3, 6-4. 2 meetings, 2 victories, 0 sets dropped. Those numbers matter, but they don't tell the entire story. Because the Eala who arrives at Arthur Ashe Stadium in late August is not necessarily the same Eala Jovic defeated earlier in the season. Since that Queen's Club loss, the trajectory described in the source material has changed dramatically. Eala went on a major run in Washington, captured her first WTA Tour title by defeating Jessica Pegula, made history for Philippine tennis, reached the 4th round at Wimbledon, climbed inside the world's top 20, and continued collecting significant victories against elite competition. That's why looking at the 2-0 record alone can be misleading. It tells us what happened in May and June. It doesn't automatically tell us what happens in late August, and tennis players can change incredibly quickly, especially at this age. Confidence changes. Shot selection improves. Players learn how to recognize patterns earlier. They become more comfortable handling pressure. Most importantly, winning big matches changes how a player sees herself. Eala's victory over Jessica Pegula in Washington, as presented in the source, is especially important in that context. Beating an established elite player in a final requires more than clean ground strokes. There's pressure, expectation, momentum swings, and the realization that one match stands between you and a major career milestone. Eala came through that challenge, and experiences like that can accelerate a young player's development. Her Wimbledon run offered another test. Grass demands fast reactions, precise movement, aggressive decision-making, and the ability to adjust quickly. According to the source, Eala's run to the 4th round demonstrated another layer of versatility in her developing game. Instead of looking like a player dependent on one surface or one tactical identity, she was showing signs of becoming more adaptable. That brings us back to Jovic. Why was she so successful against Eala in their first 2 meetings? The source describes a matchup in which Jovic repeatedly found ways to disrupt Eala's preferred patterns. Her serve limited Eala's opportunities on return, while her baseline aggression prevented Eala from settling comfortably into a counterpunching rhythm. Rather than allowing Eala to dictate the shape of rallies, Jovic took time and court position away from her. That's the tactical puzzle Eala now has to solve. The exhibition won't prove everything because this isn't a regular WTA match with ranking points and major prize money on the line. But it can still show us something extremely interesting. Has Eala developed new answers? Maybe she attacks Jovic's serve differently. Maybe she looks to shorten points instead of allowing Jovic to establish control from the baseline. Maybe the confidence gained from Washington and Wimbledon allows her to play more aggressively during the biggest moments. Or maybe Jovic simply remains an uncomfortable matchup for her. That possibility shouldn't be ignored either. Sometimes tennis creates matchup problems that rankings can't explain. A player can beat several opponents ranked above her and still struggle against one particular person because their styles interact in an awkward way. That's part of what makes this exhibition so intriguing. But there's another side to the story that goes beyond forehands and backhands: their friendship. According to the source material, Eala and Jovic are close friends. They are young athletes navigating many of the same pressures at roughly the same time, traveling constantly, competing internationally, dealing with expectations, and trying to establish themselves among the world's best players. And yet, once they walk onto the court, Friendship has to coexist with competition. That doesn't mean they suddenly stop respecting each other. It means professional athletes learn how to separate personal relationships from competitive responsibility. You can want your friend to succeed while still wanting desperately to beat her when she's standing on the opposite side of the net. That dynamic is actually one of the refreshing things about this generation of women's tennis. A rivalry doesn't need personal hostility to matter. Two athletes don't need to dislike each other for fans to care about their matches. Sometimes mutual respect makes the competition even more compelling because both players understand exactly how talented the other one is. The Stars of the Open format adds another interesting wrinkle. Because this is an exhibition designed around entertainment, charity, and showcasing the next generation, both players can compete with slightly different pressure than they would experience in a Grand Slam main draw match. There are no WTA ranking points to protect. The atmosphere can be looser. Players may feel more comfortable experimenting, attacking earlier, or producing the kind of creative tennis that they might avoid during a high-stakes tournament match. For Jovic, it's another chance to step onto a massive stage and remind everyone why she's considered one of America's most exciting young prospects. Her Australian Open run already announced her arrival, but Eala's recent results have generated enormous attention. Facing her at Arthur Ashe gives Jovic another opportunity to put her own game in front of a huge audience. For Eala, the motivation is different. She already knows what it feels like to lose to Jovic, twice. Now she gets another look at the matchup after experiencing one of the biggest developmental stretches of her career. She can test whether those recent improvements translate against an opponent who previously gave her major problems, and that makes this more than a friendly exhibition. It becomes a measuring stick. Then there's the bigger picture. This event is designed to showcase a generation that reflects just how global professional tennis has become. Jovic represents an exciting wave of young American talent. Eala carries the hopes and growing tennis enthusiasm of the Philippines, while having developed much of her game at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain. Other young names featured in the source, including João Fonseca and Lerner Tien, bring their own backgrounds and stories into the same emerging generation. That's why this event matters beyond one result. The future of tennis is arriving from everywhere, different countries, different cultures, different development systems, different playing styles, and these young players are reaching major stages earlier than ever. When Eala and Jovic step onto Arthur Ashe Stadium, fans will naturally watch the scoreboard. They'll want to know whether Eala can finally break through against an opponent who has beaten her twice, or whether Jovic's tactical advantage remains intact. But watch beyond the score. Watch how Eala approaches Jovic's serve. Watch who controls the baseline first. Watch whether Eala is willing to step inside the court and take greater risks. Watch how Jovic responds if Eala starts aggressively instead of allowing her to establish the rhythm she enjoyed in their earlier meetings. Those details could tell us more than the final result. And then watch what happens afterward. Because once the competition ends, these two players can go right back to being friends. That's not contradictory. That's professional sports. Two people can respect each other, support each other, laugh together, and still compete with everything they have when the match begins. August 27th gives tennis fans another chapter in a relationship that could become increasingly fascinating if both players continue climbing. Today, it's an exhibition. Tomorrow, they could be meeting deep in Grand Slams with championships at stake. Jovic currently owns the history. Eala arrives with the momentum, and Arthur Ashe Stadium gives them the stage. So now there's only one question left. Has Eala improved enough to finally solve the Iva Jovic puzzle, or does Jovic still have the formula that has worked twice already? Either way, this matchup doesn't need manufactured controversy. Two friends, two rising stars, a 2-0 head-to-head record, and one of the biggest courts in tennis already give us everything we need.